Welcome back to OC Outdoorsman. Well, if you follow my channel, you're all aware that I recently sold my Hobie Outback and purchased, as you can see here, a new Old Town Sportsman Big Water PDL 132. This is Old Town's Predator line of kayaks. They only recently changed the name to the Sportsman Big Water in the last month or so. Here are a couple of images of this new kayak. It's called the 132 PDL because it's 13.2 feet long and it's pedal driven. If you pay close attention to the range of motion, unlike the Mirage Drive for the Hobies, I'm going kind of in a circle, kind of like riding a bike with this PDL system. It uses a propeller, so it's very different. I'm still getting used to using the propeller versus the Mirage Drive fins. So in this video you'll get my initial impressions of this new kayak. I'm also using a different fish finder. This is the Humminbird Helix 7 G3, I believe. Very different from the Lowrance that I'm accustomed to using. So if I catch any fish today, that'll be a bonus. Right now I'm on my way to the bait barge to meet up with Glenn, who will be picking up some live bait.
Yeah, it is kind of hard.
Glenn had a bunch of questions, mainly about the differences between my old Hobie Outback and this Big Water. So we're on our way to Doheny Beach. That'll be our first stop this morning. Barracuda are out on the hunt today. You'll see from the condition of my bait here that a barracuda almost cut this one right in half. As you know, barracuda have super sharp teeth. I don't know how many hooks I lost today, but the barracuda were just slicing right through my lines. Now I really wanted to test out this kayak, so I decided to move a couple miles further north. And as soon as I get there, a big old fog starts to roll in and I began losing sight of key landmarks. Now unfortunately, one thing I forgot to do was mark my waypoint on this fish finder. I generally recommend, to new kayakers especially, mark the launch and landing areas as waypoints on your fish finder for situations like this. If a thick fog rolls in and you're unable to see the shoreline, you could easily get lost out here. And if you notice, I'm barely able to see the shoreline at this point, so I decided to head back before this fog got any thicker. I'm trolling a crocodile spoon behind me on my way back in, and I hook into something. And as I reel it in, you'll see it turns out to be a short calico bass. But I put some fish slime on the boat, so it's officially broken in. Oh man, I'm finally back inside the harbor. It was getting sketchy out there for a little bit. The wind picked up, and the seas were getting really rough. And I need to tell you, this kayak, although it's really stable, when the seas get rough, because the seat is up so high, for a few times there, for a while there, I thought I was going to tip over. Fortunately, I didn't. It is pretty stable. It just felt like, because I'm so high up off of the water, the seat is really high compared to my old Outback. Now, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of this kayak. The big plus is the hull shape. It's shaped like a V. If you look at the front, it chops right into the swells. So in rough seas, if you're going head on into a swell, it'll just cut right through it. It's really nice, and it is fast. Look at this PDL drive. Very efficient. Now, if you look at a 10-speed, pedaling this thing is such a breeze. Right now I'm just going at a very casual pace. I'm not really straining myself, and take a look at my speed. I'm easily going 3 miles an hour. On my old Hobie Outback, and especially on my old Pro Angler, it would take some effort to get to 3 or higher, and with this pedal drive it is super easy. That's a major plus here. Now, one of the reasons I ended up getting the Old Town, by the way, this is the full name of this thing is the Old Town Sportsman Big Water 132 PDL. It's a mouthful. It used to be the Predator, and one of the main reason I switched over, because I love Hobies. My past 2 kayaks was the Pro Angler and the Hobie Outback. One of the reasons I switched over, main reasons, is I do more saltwater fishing now than anything. I love the Hobies for their freshwater ability. You could pedal that thing in less than 12 inches of water if you just flutter the fins. Awesome feature. The Mirage drives are great. But I'm doing more and more ocean fishing now, and these big water or Predator kayaks were designed really for the ocean. The shape of the hull, it's 13.2 feet in length. It cuts through it. It tracks extremely well. It's awesome for saltwater. Now, let's take a look at some of the other features here. Oh, stability. Okay, it's 36 inches wide. Very stable. I could stand up on this thing and cast. And the cool thing is, because the seat is so high up, I can stand up. Actually, look at this. I'm just going to stand up now without having to grab onto anything. Because on the Hobies, on the Outback, especially my last kayak, because you're so low inside of the cockpit there and really low to the water, it took some doing. You'd either have to grab a handle, or some people have ropes that they could grab onto to help them stand up. It's not as easy in the Outback, but on this thing, because the seat is so high up, standing up is a breeze. And because it's so wide, and look at how high the sides of this Yak are. You can see it's about, I don't know, 6 or 7 inches tall. There's a lot of support there, so standing and casting is really great. Now let's talk about the seat again. Because the seat is so high, it feels kind of tippy, especially in rough seas. And just today is a great example. Coming in, I had to head in early because of the fog, but the winds were starting to pick up and the seas started to get really choppy. As I was pedaling this thing to come back, every time I get hit broadside by a swell, it felt like I was going to capsize. It was freaky. I'm so used to being low to the water in my old Outback. It was a new experience. Fortunately, I didn't tip over. I didn't capsize. It felt like it, though, because I'm so high up. The seat is adjustable forwards and backwards, but not up and down. That's a major disadvantage. And one thing I love about the Hobies is they're adjustable every which way. So there's a major negative for this particular Yak. Another negative, take a look at this. That's a cup holder. And today I brought with me my favorite thermos with my favorite drink. I got gin and juice in there. Gin for hydration, juice for nutrition, right? This thing is not gonna fit in that tiny little cup holder. I don't know what Old Town was thinking. They need to change that. And for what I understand, they made that cup holder bigger from previous models. I can't believe it was any smaller than that. There's no way. That thing is way too small. So I ended up having to throw the thermos under my seat. Now again, because the seat is so high up, there's a lot of space back here beneath the seat. I could store tackle boxes. There's even a little, I'll show you this when I land the Yak later. There's even storage space between the bottom of the Yak and the seat itself. It's really nice. But that cup holder it's useless. There's no don't know what you can stick in there, maybe a water bottle. That's it. Oh, another really great thing about this kayak, look at my you can see my homemade cooler there, or bait well, live well. I filled it up with about 15 gallons of water today. It's really heavy, and it did not affect the stability of the Yak. You could, I had Glenn check out how low my back end went. It barely moved. It's a really big Yak. It's very stable. In my old Outback, whenever I'd fill that bait well with even 10 gallons of water, it started to sink in the back a bit. So my front end went up and the back end went down. This thing could hold a lot, so it wasn't even affected by putting in that much water into that tank, and it is heavy. So there's another plus. Again, one of the reasons, and then I'm telling you right now, I'm not putting Hobie down at all. I love Hobie. One of the reasons I switched over from them to Old Town is because I do more saltwater fishing now. And Hobies are great for shallow. For when I used to do lake fishing, when I used to fish the lakes a lot, they're great because even in like 6 inches of water, I could flutter the fins on those Mirage drives, and I could go forward. I didn't have to switch to paddles. It's genius. It's what I loved about Hobie. But now, these days, I do mostly ocean fishing. I'm always out on doing saltwater, and this big water, this Predator, if you will, it was designed. It's like it was designed for ocean fishing. It cuts through the swells. It's fast, and yeah, I'm telling you, really well-designed kayak. They just need to get rid of that stupid cup holder, and if only you could adjust these seats up and down. I mean, we could go, it's adjustable forwards and backwards, but you can't adjust the height, and that's a major disadvantage. But when I land this thing, I'll do a more in-depth review probably in the coming weeks. Again, this is just the my first trip out, so in the future I'll do a more thorough review. But these are my initial impressions, again, of this Old Town Sportsman Big Water 132 PDL. Also, they need to shorten that name. It's way too long. As I make my way back to the landing point, you can see I've already pulled the PDL drive up along with the rudder, and I've switched to paddles. By the way, these are Poseidon angler paddles. They're 98 inches long, and they were designed for these wider fishing kayaks. Paddling a kayak of this size was surprisingly easy. I'm not sure if it's because of the hull design or the length of the paddle, but it was tracking really well, even with the rudder up. I was going in a straight line, and it was moving pretty quickly. So I would be confident in saying that if for any reason this PDL drive failed, let's say the propeller fell off or something, I'd have no problems paddling this kayak back to the landing point. Pulling this gigantic kayak up from the water onto the beach was no easy task. It's 117 pounds without all my gear, then that's just with the drive and the hull. But add to that the weight of my live well filled with water and all the gear, it was well over 117 pounds. But once I drained the bait tank of all the water and removed the PDL drive, the kayak really wasn't that difficult to pull up onto the beach. So now you have my initial impressions of this big water kayak. I'll obviously be spending more time with it. This was just the maiden voyage. We'll learn more about it as I spend more time with it on the water. So thank you all for watching, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and do me a favor and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks again.